So good morning, Paul. I'm going to introduce you to everybody. This is Paul O'Connell from Bridge Health and Wellbeing Clinic in Christchurch. They also have a Pilates studio down there. I've met Paul through the David McDonald's Vistage group, and I also know his wife Louise, who I met and who I understand used to work for actually Fretton's, and we met at the Directors Dining Club. So a good connection with both of you. So my series is all about careers and how people sort of got to where they are just now, and the obvious question is what did your teacher say? So we'll come on to that right at the end. Excuse me. So you actually were with Nuffield Health for 10 years, which is just phenomenal, and you can tell me all about that in a minute. But what I'm really interested to do is just give us a bit of a track record of where you've been with your career. I know that you're a highly qualified rehabilitation science instructor, and you actually were working at Bournemouth University for a little while as well. So give us a bit of a potted history then, Paul, and then we'll get to know a little bit more about you.
Of course. So I went straight into uni from doing A-levels. I originally did sports therapy as a degree, thinking that I would go into sport. That was always the direction I wanted to go into, having sort of always had an interest in sport, and then physiotherapy as a result. So that took me through until my early 20s. Came out of that degree thinking I would go and work for the best football club in the country and
like you do.
rule the world, as you do when you're a young 20-year-old.
Yeah.
Clearly that didn't quite happen. Had a few little things going on, but nothing quite that was going to work out really, or was where I wanted to be. And a couple of colleagues from my first degree had gone on to do a master's, as you mentioned, in rehab science, which gives you your physiotherapy qualification as a result. Mm-hmm. So I'd been in touch with them and asked them what they thought of it, and they were finding it really, really useful and thought it was the way to go. So that's what I did. So I had a sort of a year and a half between degrees, then went and did my master's up north, up in Teesside. So that was a 2-year program to get my physiotherapy qualification. Then stayed in Teesside working at the big teaching hospital, James Cook, there as a junior physiotherapist. Always with the idea that I wanted to work in sport and orthopedics and that type of thing. Yeah. And the opportunity to progress at maybe the rate I felt that I was able to wasn't quite opening up there. It was just a big place and jobs don't always come up. So that was fine. So, sure. And also it was always my intention to move back down south. So when I was maybe twiddling my thumbs a little bit up north, I made some inquiries down south. Came down for what I thought was just an informal meeting at the Wessex Nuffield in Chandler's Ford. Yeah. Stayed there for a couple of hours, and as I was leaving, the manager said, "When can you start?" So
wow, that's amazing, isn't it? So,
yeah, which was
so the seaside was calling, the opportunity there, and fate prevailed, didn't it? You know, it was amazing. That's fantastic.
So came back up north to see, and I was already with Louise. We weren't married at that point, but said, right, I've been offered a job, so we better make plans. So handed my notice in. We've moved down south. Lived in Fordingbridge for a bit. That's where I'm originally from. Mm-hmm. And then moved to Bournemouth. And then I commuted backwards and forwards to Chandler's Ford for 13 years. So it was, it was, got used to travelling. That was the main thing.
So your carbon footprint's a little bit better now than it was, yeah?
It's much better now, yeah.
Tick the sustainability box, yeah?
Absolutely, yes, exactly. So I try and ride to work. I need to start riding a bit more to work. That's the truth of it now. Yeah. So yeah, started at Chandler's Ford, Nuffield, Wessex as it's called, and sort of worked my way up the ranks there, became clinical lead and then the manager. Then I got a regional managerial role within the physio side of the business. And then an opportunity came to transfer to Bournemouth, Nuffield, about, what would that be, 3 years ago. Mm-hmm. And so I went for that. Because we had our young children, so it just meant that I could be around a little bit more and be involved in clubs and things like that, which was amazing. Sure. So did that, and then about 2 years ago was when the opportunity at Bournemouth University came up. So they just launched at the time a sports therapy degree. So I've done a full 360 with regards to sports therapy. So I'm now back lecturing on the sports therapy program, which I originally trained in. So I still do that as well. So I was doing 2 days a week. That's about to reduce to 1 day a week in July. And I've kept that going alongside the starting of our clinic. So
I'm going to ask you about that now. So what prompted you to start that clinic? Did you have a vast amount of investment, or did you just like go for it? How did you structure the start of your business?
So the way it started is I just felt that I'd done my time for Nuffield. I did 13 years, as I say. I couldn't really go any higher if I was going to stay local from a progressional point of view. I'd done that job for probably 6 years, so it wasn't really challenging me anymore. So I was looking for a bit of a new challenge. And at the same time, Louise had retrained to become a Pilates instructor. And she was looking for studios to work in and things like that. And she wasn't really finding anything that maybe she was going to be totally happy with. So it was the Christmas last 18 months ago. We were driving up to York because that's where Louise is from. So we were driving up to see the family for Christmas. And as you do when you're sat in the car for 5 hours, you talk about stuff. And we were talking about work. And I said, well, I'm sort of maybe ready to move on. And Louise was saying, well, she can't really find somewhere that would suit her.
Yes.
So I said, well, why don't we do it together?
Yeah,
so
fantastic.
That was where it came. So we chatted it through with Louise's mum and dad while we were up in York, and my mum was with us as well. So we all talked it through, handed my notice in literally when we got back from Christmas, served my notice, and here we are.
So I bet that conversation was really buzzing, wasn't it? And
the
5 hours on the way back, I bet was just incredible, wasn't it? Because when actually your plan comes together and you go, yeah, that's it. It's all really exciting, isn't it? And you sort of go off in lots of different directions, and then sort of it all starts to take shape, doesn't it? Which sort of brings me on now to, you've actually just about a year old, and you've hit a really challenging patch, haven't you? Really, with the COVID-19 health event. So how has it been the last sort of few months for you, Paul?
Yeah, we got the keys on at the end of May last year. So we've had the keys to the clinic for a year. We officially opened on the 29th of July. We worked with a great business consultant, Dawn Crossingham. So she was really helpful to help us with our business planning and all that type of thing. But we certainly didn't write into the business plan that after 8 months we would be temporarily closing the clinic and moving from a totally face-to-face business to a totally online business.
Yeah, sure,
we've now become.
So how did you actually do that? What have you actually done to sort of overcome the challenges of not being able to do your face-to-face?
So we've moved. So the Pilates classes have gone totally online. So we started, I think Louise was doing 4 or 5, and that over the last 3 months, that's increased to 10 or 11 now.
Wow.
From the front room. So we have to, we're all in the back of the house trying to keep a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old as quiet as can be, if that's possible. Fortunately, the weather's good, isn't it? So they're out in the back garden a lot.
Sure.
And then, so that's the Pilates side, and then the physio side, again, we've been doing what we call virtual consultations. So I'm able to, similar to this really, it would be a video chat like we're doing now, where I would ask questions of my client. How are you getting on? What's your pain like? What's et cetera, like any standard physio consultation would be.
Right, so we need to get you back to do your PhD then, don't we? And then you can be Dr. O'Connell,
Since working at the uni, there has been comments about when are you going to do your PhD? It's a huge undertaking.
It is indeed, maybe something for later when the kids are a bit older.
Maybe.
So you're online, you've got all your Pilates going, you've got your online consultations.
So and we're now sort of in the transition at looking at how are we going to get back into the clinic. So we the powers that be, the government obviously, and then bodies like the Chartered Society of Physiotherapy who govern how physios work, they've brought out lots of guidelines to say you can start to think about, or some clinics already are starting to offer face-to-face consultations.
Yeah.
There are obviously, it's not business as usual, so there are lots of hoops to jump through, and it's all about safeguarding, really, from the point of view of passing corona around, isn't it?
Yeah,
So we
that's
have
right.
to do.
I think we talked about risk assessment, didn't we, before?
Yeah. So we've done policies, risk assessments, new procedures. We've got a survey coming out next week that will go out to all of our mailing list and also onto social media to get it's market research, really, to get some feedback from our clients and potential new clients regarding what their expectations would be, what would make them confident with regard to returning to the clinic, with a view to hopefully opening a week or so after that. So
how does that work with your Pilates class then? This is, I know, something we touched on earlier on, but how will that actually work in a confined space?
So the guidance from Body Control Pilates, we were the governing body that Louise ties into, at the moment is that it's looking like probably July we can look at hosting small face-to-face Pilates classes, but again, we need to start to think about how that will work in reality, really. So it's all about controlling that risk, but also meeting people's expectations with regard to, is the class worthwhile? Are they getting out of it what they want? That type of thing.
Yeah. So that's absolutely amazing, isn't it? So when are you opening your doors again?
No confirmed date yet, but middle of June is what we're planning for.
Yeah, and then I think on the 4th of July, then we're going to hear a little bit more then, aren't we?
Yeah. So I would hope that physio can develop through June, and then we can start to then look at, because we unfortunately we just taken on a massage therapist as well. She did 2 sessions for us before lockdown, and then of course that had to stop. So we would hope that massage and Pilates in some fashion can start in July, but again we just have to wait for the guidance and the new guidelines from our governing bodies.
So with all people then that have got businesses at the moment, how have you been managing with your young family? It's always a question that comes up with me when I'm talking to my clients.
We're quite lucky that we can. My mum lives locally to us, but she's on her own. So as soon as lockdown hit, we made sure that she moved in with us so that she could still have interactions with the children and us, obviously. So having 3 adults obviously is better than 2. So we sort of mix and match, I suppose. So when Louise is teaching, me and mum will be with the kids, and then when Louise isn't teaching, which is generally in the afternoon, Louise will be more with the kids, and then I can then do some physio work or clinic work or uni work. So it's sort of it's a mix and a match, really.
So I've got to know you obviously over the last few weeks, and it's been absolutely fascinating to hear. And you have such a professional setup, and which obviously will go from strength to strength. And you're all highly qualified. You're working really hard to make things safe so that people can come back and have their treatments. You work in a professional setting, which is great. And the future is looking all lovely and rosy for you. So, last question is, of course, which is what this is about, which is careers, is what did your teacher say?
So it was my mum always recollects the careers meetings we used to go to at school, and it was I always wanted to be a physio. The story goes, I broke my leg when I was 14, and coming back from that I had to have some physio, and it sort of was what got my interest. I was a very keen and fairly good level sportsman, but I was never going to be a professional sportsman. So I think I subconsciously realized that if I wanted to be involved in sport, it would have to be maybe as a medical staff rather than an actual player. So physio was always top of the list. And the careers people used to just always say, just get as broad a level of qualification as you can. And then see what comes about. So it was always a little bit disappointing, I would say.
So what did your when you were very young, what did your teacher say about you?
So my teachers used to always say that mind is potentially elsewhere. So again, my mum will recollect I had piano lessons booked in on a school lunchtime, and I would hardly ever go because I was out in the playground playing football or tennis or cricket or whatever it might be. So I've always been very lucky. I could swap for the week before an exam, and I could just almost memorize things sort of photographically. So I'm very fortunate. It's not saying that that's how my children will study. But some people are just lucky like that, aren't they? So
yes, indeed. Yeah.
So yeah, I think I could have tried harder, but attained well, I would say, is probably
I think you're probably right there. Do you know what, Paul? It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. And if I just say Paul O'Connell from Bridge Health and Wellbeing in Christchurch, open for business from?
Middle of June.
And people can catch up with you anyway on your LinkedIn profile. I know you've got a really good Insta account as well, and one or two other things. So going to wish you really, really well with all that, and I'll probably see you at one of our online networking that we've been having, and an absolute pleasure. So thank you very much for today.
Thank you very much.
No problem.